Okay, so to repeat what we did with Eder, I'm going to do the same kind of thing with the cowboy. So I'm going to go to the cowboy's layer. And the first thing I'm going to do is adjust for the lighting that's coming down onto him, and I'm going to dodge and burn. So I'm going to take the dodge tool first. I'm going to run the dodge tool along his shirt here a little bit. His shirt's dark, so I'm going to start with shadows. It'll lighten up the dark values there in his shirt a little bit without overexposing it too much. Lighten up the top of his pant leg, maybe his knee over here, the top of his arm, the one side of his face a little bit. And then I'm going to switch to the burn tool and darken, again, because we're working with dark values on his shirt, I'm going to switch to shadows for the range, darken down in here a little bit. Undo that. I'm going to make the hardness on my brush 0, so I have kind of a softer edge on things when I'm doing this. A little bit darker underneath his hip, the bottom of his leg here, his boot down in here, a little bit darker on his face, his shoulder. It's got a little shadow from his face, the underside of his arm, just a little bit darker to show that the light is coming down from that direction. So I'm just going to do kind of a before and after. So this is before I made the adjustments on the cowboy, and then this is after I made the color adjustments on the cowboy. So that's the lighting adjustments, and now I'm going to go ahead and put in the cast shadow and the balance point shadow. So just like we did with Eder's layer, I'm going to hold down the control button, and I'm going to click on the cowboy layer thumbnail. Click on that. The cowboy ends up being selected. I'm going to make a new layer, and that's the layer I'm going to put the shadow on, the cast shadow. So I've got black in my toolbox for my color, and I am going to use the paint bucket, and I'm going to click, and it totally fills in that silhouette with black. So what I'm going to do here, which I didn't do earlier, is I'm going to, instead of keeping the selection, I'm going to deselect. Okay. What's different about the cowboy shadow and Eder's shadow is the cowboy shadow is not going to touch him at all. His cast shadow will not touch him. So I'm going to start off by moving his whole shadow down here to the ground, but then we still need to squish it and distort it. So his shadow is down below him. Just to kind of keep consistent, I am going to move his shadow layer below the cowboy so I can know that it belongs to him as I don't lose track in my layers. But while I'm on what for us now is layer 79, I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Distort again. And just like with Eder's cast shadow, I'm going to squish it down into the picture plane. Squish it. Oh. The distort is really easy to get lots of different effects. So I need to make sure that I'm keeping the effect I want. So I'm squishing it right now. Squishing it. And I want it to be on the floor over here. But I also want it to be shifted to the right a little bit. Okay. So it's down on the floor underneath him. I'm going to lower the opacity of that layer till it looks like it's about right. And so we're really not going to see it very much. And then I am going to use my filter and blur this with a Gaussian blur. just to kind of soften the edges. So we don't really see that too much as far as the shadow goes, but it's a nice little detail. The other thing that we need with the cowboy then is a balance point shadow. And for the cowboy, while he's not touching the floor, his hand is touching the chair. So I'm going to make a new blank layer, and I'm going to zoom in again so you guys can see this a little bit easier. So here's the cowboy's layer. I'm going to hide it and reveal it. And the layer right below is where we're going to put this balance point shadow. So it's a blank layer right now. I'm going to get the paintbrush. I still have black paint. And I'm just going to put a little bit of a shadow under there. On the chair back, underneath the hand where it's touching. And maybe I'll put a little bit of a blur on that. Just a little soft blur, maybe not quite that much, but a little blur because there's a little bit of a distance between the hand and the shadow. Okay, so we've got a little bit more detail here, a little bit more realism. I'm gonna show you the poster next.